Here is Tucker Carlson, who, incidentally, I should tell you, was reported by, I think it was Politico Playbook this morning, as having dinner with George W. Bush in Florida. They both own homes in a town in Florida, I guess.
I thought Tucker was anti-war and just rebranded himself as a paleo-conservative. That's what I'd heard.
He's going through a rebranding of the rebranding. He is the right-wing populist who, by my count now, has a house in Maine and a house in Florida. May also have one in New York, I imagine, unless he stays in an Airbnb there when he does his show. He's the one who said, don't take the masks and all that too seriously.
Right.
Of course, then had his own, was in Maine broadcasting for some strange reason.
Yeah. What kind of tie is he going to wear in this third iteration of himself? He had the bow tie. Now he's at the it's a bolo tie.
Bolo tie is next.
Right.
And we should also say
that's why he's meeting with Bush.
Reportedly, according to Politico, they were having dinner at a third party's house. So it's nice that all these folks are having dinner parties. I remember those. I imagine they're all wearing their masks indoors while they have this dinner party. But here is Tucker Carlson. Instead of suggesting that the presence of National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. is a function of the insurrection that was driven by his network's insistence that the election was stolen by Joe Biden. He sees something else nefarious in the idea of having National Guardsmen in Washington for the inauguration.
Woman may have been trampled to death by the crowd. As of tonight, those are the 3 casualties we can confirm from the riot at the Capitol building on January 6th. In response to that, our leaders have assembled the largest military presence in Washington in all of American history during peacetime. In 1864, as the Civil War raged on the other side of the Potomac, and Americans died every day in large numbers in battle, there were fewer federal troops protecting Washington, D.C. than there are tonight. And it's truly a national force. The Guardsmen you see in Washington have come from every state in the Union, as well as from Puerto Rico. And the question is, why is that? There's no practical or operational justification for it. For decades, Washington, D.C. has had the highest per capita law enforcement presence in the country, and one of the highest in the world. So there was no need to fly in troops from Alaska to keep the city safe. But keeping the city safe was hardly the point of the exercise. The murder rate in the District of Columbia has risen with terrifying speed over the last 6 months. Men, women, and children shot to death in the streets. But no one in charge seems to care about that or even notice their deaths. So no matter what they are telling you, those 26,000 federal troops are not there for your safety. Instead, unmistakably, the Democratic Party is using those troops to send the rest of us a message about power. We're in charge now. We run this nation from Honolulu to our colony in the Caribbean and everything in between, very much including where you and your family live. Do not question us. Men with guns enforce our decrees. We control the Pentagon. And indeed, they do control the Pentagon. Republicans have spent years ignoring the leftward drift of our officer corps, but we can't ignore it now. The mask is off. Our military leadership, the very same generals who howled at the idea of deploying American troops to stop an invasion of our southern border, those same generals sent tens of thousands of soldiers with rifles to Washington purely as a show of force on behalf of the political party they support. And once they did that, they then allowed Democratic politicians to degrade and politicize the military itself. Democrats in Congress demanded that the troops sent to Washington this week submit to a political purity test, ideological vetting, as they put it, to make certain that every soldier professed loyalty to the new regime. Not loyalty to our country, not loyalty to our Constitution, but loyalty to the aims of a specific political party. Nothing like that has ever happened in America. And just a few months ago, it would have been unimaginable.
Okay, first of all, nothing like that has ever happened in America, and nothing is still, as of today, has happened like that. There was no, the questioning of these soldiers was not as to their fealty to Joe Biden. It was, are you sure you're not a white supremacist? Are you sure you're not an extremist like the ilk that Tucker Carlson and his network encouraged to believe that the election was stolen. In fact, what's amazing about this is he's continuing on with the exact same project that drove people to attack the Capitol here. He is continuing on with the same level of paranoia and conspiracy theory. Now he is saying both, on one hand, that the Democrats ideologically control the military because they refuse to go down to the border. Laughable. And B, they also disregard the military simultaneously. So they both control and disparage the military. And what is going on here, I think, from a symbolic perspective, is the idea, because we know how much Donald Trump tried to politicize the military. We know this. And this is an attempt for our government to say, we all support a peaceful transition of power, and we are not going to let anybody to continue to interfere with it. And when Tucker Carlson characterizes this as some type of oppression of free Americans, that you cannot speak and you cannot talk, as opposed to recognizing, and of course he starts off the clip by minimizing only 3 deaths, because the other 2 deaths don't count, but only 3 deaths, as if you needed more deaths on a storming of the Capitol building to justify why people might be concerned, particularly with what we have seen from these right-wing paramilitary groups talking about, their invasions. It's unbelievable. And I should also add, this is a network which came to a legal settlement with the family of Seth Rich, who they touted as having been possibly assassinated by some combination of the DNC and Hillary Clinton's, octopus of killers. Essentially, they settled with the Seth Rich's family for millions of dollars for what they did to the Rich family. But part of the settlement, and we only know this as of this weekend, because part of the settlement was that they could not reveal this settlement happened prior to the following the election.
Curious.
Very odd position for a media outlet to take, that they don't want this information that the Seth Rich, that they are conceding to the complete fiction of the Seth Rich conspiracy, that they haven't conceded, that they don't want that out before the election. That is a very odd position to take for a company that ostensibly doesn't have a stake in the election of somebody. I mean, this guy is so incredibly disingenuous, and it is so dangerous what he's continued to allow to say. At this point, you would think there would be a slight amount of regret in the minds of folks like Tucker Carlson. And frankly, where's George Herbert? Where's George Bush, W. Bush, who supposedly, had a problem with what Donald Trump was doing? Why is George Bush meeting with this guy for dinner if he is not on board with ginning up this type of conspiracy?
Well, I mean, Tucker Carlson, he's so against the usage of the military, of members of the police being used to advance the agenda of one political party's ends. I mean, they are supposed to be a neutral force, which is why I'm sure he stood up to the claims from the right wing and from his own network that the Insurrection Act should be used on Black Lives Matter protesters over the summer, or when Trump gassed peaceful protesters outside so we could get a photo op. I mean, it's so disingenuous that he is pretending to clutch his pearls about this when there's no evidence to support it, and when there was actual politicization of forces that use deadly weapons, not the military in of itself, but the surrounding institutions. Nothing. He said nothing about that.
Nothing.